Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tectonic Takes podcast. I'm your usual host, Ivan Ornelas, well, one of your two usual co-hosts. But due to some last-minute preparations that Favi had to make on his trip to Japan, as he is in the process of moving there, we have another host today, my good friend Will Schneider. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm grateful for you guys to let me join on the show, and I wish Favi was here with us, but we understand that he's got some stuff going on. So,
Right. You knew Favi before this podcast, right?
yeah, we went to high school together, and we've always kind of talked about the Quakes for a while, but now he seems like he stepped his game up a lot and has his own podcast, and I was kind of dying to get on.
All right, that's great to hear. Yeah, Bobby told me a bit about you, and I know that you've been following the podcast since its earliest days, and we really appreciate your support. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background following soccer as well as following earthquakes and anything else you'd like the listeners to know about you?
Yeah, I've been obviously playing soccer as a kid for a while. Played a little bit in high school, but I started really following soccer about, I would say, probably 2010 with the World Cup, South Africa World Cup, with
Oh,
the
yeah, that was
wonderful,
fun.
yeah, the vuvuzelas every 2 seconds. Yeah, no, that's pretty much where it really started, and then I started following the Quakes shortly after that because that was the home team. And then next thing you know, 2012 was rolling around, and it was probably one of the better seasons. Obviously, every Quake fan knows about 2012.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so and I was a big Victor Bernardes fan, and then it just kept growing from there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And 2010 was definitely an important year for me as well in terms of my soccer fandom. Prior to that, played a little bit as a kid, and my brother, he was playing soccer too. And then I watched the occasional World Cup game here and there. I think I remember some of the 2006 World Cup because I was 10, but before then, that was all blur, especially 2002, being young and being in Japan, South Korea, so probably wouldn't watch anything anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was an incredible World Cup. Just seeing a lot of the regular contenders, like both finalists from 2006, France and Italy, go out early. And then Mexico and USA, they did pretty well in the group stage, being Mexican American. I followed both teams. And then unfortunately, Mexico continued to struggle with El Quinto Partido, that mirage that eludes them to this day. And the USA, they got caught against a feisty Ghanaian team that they're essentially the home team, especially with South Africa eliminated. Africa really wanted them to do well in the tournament. And had it not been for Luis Suarez handball, they might have made the semifinals. So it was an
Yeah,
incredible tournament.
yeah, it was tough. Yeah, but we'll see what happens now with the future for the USA soccer team with the youth movement they've got going on. Hopefully, they keep going at it.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about this guy in particular, but if any Quake could potentially be involved in some important World Cup qualifiers and knock on wood, maybe end up on a World Cup roster someday, maybe Jackson Yule could be that guy. He's got a lot of competition, but in these last two games, we saw a little bit of why Jackson Yule is in that conversation.
No, definitely. Yule has obviously shown a lot, and we'll get more into detail about him signing back with us. I mean, that's huge. And yeah, I mean, who knows what Berhalter is really going to do? I think he could call up Yule anytime. I feel like he's a coach that has been for sure dabbling in the MLS a lot, obviously with Lima going up there as well. So we'll see. You never know.
All right. Do you remember what was the last San Jose Earthquakes game you went to before lockdown?
Opening day against
Oh, sweet.
Toronto. Yeah, so I was on the side where Alanis got that free kick, and me and my buddies were jumping up and down, going crazy. And one of my friend hurt his shin, I think almost broke it off the chair. I don't know, it was crazy. He hurt himself, but it was a great game to tie. It was right after my birthday, so it was the day after my birthday, so it was good to see that
Oh
parade.
yeah, that's pretty cool. yeah, before I moved to San Diego, I lived in East Bay over in Martinez, so it was always a
Okay.
bit of a journey to get to San Jose Earthquakes games. But whenever I made the trip, it was pretty fun. The last game
Yeah.
I went to, it was also for a birthday, my cousin's birthday. It was in April, and it was in 2019 against Portland Timbers. Quakes were off to a very slow start that season against another struggling team, Portland, and then they managed to win that game. Daniel Vega had a big penalty save, and it was a pretty good match. So
Yeah.
we
I
picked a
mean,
good one in an otherwise, unconvincing start to the season, but it was a lot of fun.
yeah. I mean, quick games are always fun. I mean, it's always good to go. They always got the great food with those food trucks, and that open bar is, it's always good.
All right, then. So we usually start things off with a few other announcements if we have any, but also we like to play a little quiz as well. So, uh, how good are you when it come? You think you are when it comes to like soccer trivia? I'm sure it depends because there's so much to draw from.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's so much to draw from, and I don't know. Have I been really tested with my soccer knowledge in a while? It's kind of been rough. I was hoping I was going to face off with Favi and hope he would mess up a little bit, and maybe I'll try to sneak in a win against him on a quiz. But I don't know. I'll give it a shot, and hopefully it's might be a little bad though.
Yeah, so I want to go with some. We're going to look at some of the stats from the last two seasons. This very unusual 2020 season, which has been a bit stop and go, although right now it feels like it keeps going at a fever pitch. And then, of course, the completed 2019 season, which had its highs and lows as well. I'll give you the name of a player and a stat, and you try to guess how far, what that number is. So, for example, if this was the Galaxy, I would say Christian Pavon, and you would, and assists, and you would try to guess, I think Christian Pavon had 10 assists that season or something like that. Does that make sense?
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, and I'll give you five of these quantities from 2019 and five from 2020, and we'll see what your score is out of 10.
Okay.
And we'll see for the 2019 stats, since a lot more happened. We can go with a leeway of one, but for 2020, we'll see how if you can get them spot on. Okay.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
All right. Let's start with something from 2020. How many goals does Andy Rios have
I
this
think he's
season?
at what, 4 now? Or is it 5, 4 or 5?
He's at 3.
3?
So he has So he has one
Oh,
against
am
Vancouver
I?
Whitecaps.
I think I was kind of counting
Two against
the.
the Whitecaps. Yeah. What were
I
you
think I was
counting?
counting the tournament. I was kind of counting the tournament. So is that included, or are we talking
Oh
about just
wait,
regular season?
whoscored.com. And I'm just now noticing that they have two entries for a lot of these players. I'm guessing some of these are from MLS's back tournament, some of these are from uh, the regular season. So maybe just to be safe, there's only one entry per player on the 2019 window. We'll try our best with the 2019 stats just because they're less confusing. How about that?
Yeah, that tournament kind of throws it off a
Yeah.
little.
So that was I guess a bit of a practice round. Focus on 2019 then. So you ready?
Yeah, let's go. 2019. Here we go.
And remember, since it has been a bit for that season, you get a leeway of one. So if the answer is like 9 and you say 10, then we'll count that as a point.
All right.
All right. So for 2019 season, how many goals did Danny Husen score?
2.
Danny Husen scored 5 goals that season. And
Yeah.
now it's easier to guess lower because he has had his injury problems at several points. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's been somewhat useful.
Yeah, I mean, 5 goals is useful, especially that 2019 season. But yeah, it just felt like you never really saw Houston out there. So
Yeah, no problem. So, how many assists did Christian Espinoza have?
10.
10 is actually spot on. So, you're 1 for 2. Good job,
There you
Will.
go.
Yeah. He, a lot of fans probably were a bit focusing on his lack of goal output, but assists as a winger is always, or an attacking midfielder gets categorized as both in different sources, is always helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look necessarily for Espinoza to score goals. I kind of as a playmaker, honestly, for every Quake fan should kind of see him more as a playmaker, and we're expecting Rios and Wando to be scoring more of the goals. But I mean, obviously, we'll always take an Espinoza goal.
Yeah, with Espinoza, it's kind of like with the Warriors with Klay Thompson. Even if he has a dry spell when it comes to production offensively, like you still bet on him. Any given game, like he'll make his mark.
Right, exactly.
All right. So next, let's see. How many goals did Magnus Eriksson have that season?
Ooh, 7.
He had 6. So you were within the leeway. So you get a
There we
point there. You're 2
go.
for 3. All right. Let's see. How many goals did Nick Lima have that season?
3.
He had 1 goal.
Uh, I wanted to say 2. I was giving Lima a little bit more. For some reason, I felt like I was thinking he had 2, and then I was like, oh, maybe he had a third.
Whenever he scores a goal, it's definitely a memorable occasion. So it
Yeah,
is easy to get excited when it comes to that. All right. How many assists did Jackson Ewell have that season?
4.
You were spot on. Jackson Ewell had 4 assists. So you're 3 for 5.
Man, I felt like I've been looking at these stats all day today.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's see. How many goals did Vaco have?
Ooh, 5.
He had 8 goals.
Yeah, Vaco did have a really good year, actually, pretty good year. He was making a lot of goals. I knew I should have gone a little bit higher.
Right. So he had 8 that year. You're 3 for 6. How many goals did Tommy Thompson have?
2.
2 is correct. So you're 4 for 7.
All right.
How many assists did Wando have?
3.
You're within the leeway. He had 2.
All right. All right.
5 for 8. All right. How many goals did Judson have?
1.
1 is also correct. He doesn't score very many,
Yeah.
as we saw in these last few games. He had some chances, and
Yeah.
he didn't
Oh
really look
God.
as threatening as we would have
No.
liked.
No.
But
That
it's all
was
right. That's not his job.
yeah. No, it's not. But still, he's still got to put a better shot on net.
Yeah, for the fans who make the N'Golo Kante comparisons with him, like at least Kante, like you expect him to score in a somewhat dangerous position.
Yeah, or at least make it look dangerous. I mean, that pretty much that breakaway he had the other night, like it was just him in the goal, and he just pushed it left, and I was just like, oh my god, it was terrible.
All right, last one, and it had to end on this one. How many goals did Chris Wondolowski have that season?
12.
He had 15. So overall,
Ah,
you got a 6 out of 10. You passed. That
all right, that's all I can ask
was
for.
a tough one.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's been a while.
yeah, and I honestly wasn't too familiar with whoscored.com until I was looking up stats for this quiz. They have a lot of useful information, particularly for the current season. I'll just read off what they have for the San Jose Earthquakes characteristics. So they have a strength tab, coming back from losing positions, very strong. Attacking down the wings and shooting from direct free kicks, both strong. I'm guessing the free kicks one is based off Nice.
I guess so. I mean, we haven't had too many great free kick chances.
Yeah, so I think they were kind of gasping at straws for strengths there, unfortunately. For
Yeah, a little bit.
weaknesses, it's a bit of a longer list. Uh, they have aerial duels, defending counterattacks, defending set pieces, defending against long shots, and defending against skillful players as weak, and then stopping opponents from creating chances is very weak. Sounds about right.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think it's changed a little bit now, but yeah, for the
Right.
most
Who
part, it's
knows when they
pretty
last updated? Maybe not in a
right.
couple weeks, given it's San Jose Earthquakes and they have stats from a lot of different major leagues across the world.
Yeah, but overall, it's been
And
pretty
then
spot on.
and then lastly, for the style of play column, they have long balls, attacking down the right, playing with width, consistent first 11, non-aggressive, and playing in their own half. And I think that sounds about right, other than the typical, obviously, man marking system, which I guess they're probably drawing from like a pool of categories, and maybe they don't have something from that, because aside from San Jose Earthquakes, Leeds United's the other reputable team that uses that specific system. But it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that they're breaking it down for you.
Yeah, so definitely a website that I'm going to refer to in the future. But now that we've taken a look at the San Jose Earthquakes past, let's take a look at some of the two most recent games, starting with the win over LA Galaxy. So, what was your initial reactions after that win?
Finally, right? I mean, I think every Quake fan was probably like, the finally we got a win, and the way we did it was kind of typical Quake fashion. Late score game on something, something broken. Kind of a broken play a little bit. Espinoza made a play and got it to Yule, and Yule put it in back in the net, and we got a win. Honestly, I thought it was going to end in a tie, but wow, it was a good win.
Yeah, so I'll break
Oh,
down the scoring information.
I'm sorry. I was actually
So
talking about the I was talking about the LAFC game. That was my bad.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That's why I was making no sense there. Sorry. Yeah, no,
yeah,
sorry.
no
Against the
problem.
Galaxy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was
LA.
starting to think as I was saying it.
I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. I'm sorry about the Galaxy. Yes. No, I mean, obviously, sorry. Let's restart a little bit. But yeah, no, the beginning, obviously, Galaxy getting a goal real early was a little shaky. But then Wando missing that PK was just unorthodox from Wando. I mean, he's got to put that in the back of the net. But then obviously Lopez with his goal was just amazing to see. Obviously, someone other than Wando or anyone else really scoring. It was great to see Lopez put that in, and then Chase Salinas, getting that PK for us, and having Rios kick it was really interesting, and get to see him put it in the net.
Yeah, so you broke down the Quakes goals very well. I think Marcos Lopez uh, is was a contender for goal of the week. That was an incredible strike, and definitely something that we'd like to see more of San Jose Earthquakes. That it was it's been a very typical scrappy season. You're not seeing too many goal of the week contenders from this team, but when it happens, it's a beauty to watch, and definitely something that will get people excited to watch the Quakes highlights on the MLS YouTube channel when they're usually just looking for their own team or teams like the Sounders.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just good just to get a win. I mean, of course, it was just big to get another win, a second win in a row. It was just good to see.
Yeah, and then Sebastian Leggett, he's gotten into the habit of scoring against the San Jose Earthquakes. He did score the winner against the San Jose Earthquakes in that first encounter in this period since the MLS is back tournament. And I am just verifying now that while Marcos Lopez was in the running for the goal of the week, it ended up going to Atlanta United Brooks Lennon, which is just like typical. Even in their worst season in MLS in their young history, they still have a few reasons to celebrate. But good for them, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about the Galaxy. We don't like the Galaxy, but yeah, I mean, Leggett has been kind of has our number, but yeah.
Yeah, and then 14th minute penalty. That was definitely a crucial moment in the match because conceding an early goal, especially when you're the Earthquakes, was not only just conceded early goals often in their run of losses, just conceding goals in general has been a problem. So there was that feeling of like, oh snap, here we go again, and particularly against the LA Galaxy, who has been playing pretty well against the San Jose Earthquakes in the two previous games. But then it all worked out in the end. But at the time, Wando's penalty being saved by David Bingham of all people, a goalkeeper that not too many fans were totally missing when he left, it had to sting a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it was definitely like you said, like, oh, here we go again, feeling for sure, probably for every Quake fan, especially only 4 minutes into the match, and then yeah, Dewando gets saved against David Bingham, your former goalkeeper, was definitely a little saltier than normal.
Yeah, and I think the timing of Marcos Lopez's goal, I think it could be a totally different game and totally different halftime team talk and morale if he doesn't score that right before halftime.
Yeah, of course. I mean, getting a goal anytime half is huge momentum builder, and it's the other way around too. It demoralizes a team once you concede a goal. Right before half. It's probably one of the worst things you could do. During a first half of soccer.
Yeah, taking a look at some of these lineups, so both teams, as the majority of MLS teams tend to do, they played with 4-2-3-1s. For the Quakes, we had Marcin Kowski in goal, a back line of Lima, Youngworth, Beeson, and Lopez, holding midfielders Yidson and Yule, with Felipe coming off the bench for Yidson, and then the front four with Espinoza and Fierro on the wings, Wando down the middle, and Rios up top with Cowell and Salinas filling that substitute roles that they've had in quite a few games uh, in that triple substitution along with Luis Felipe. Were you happy with the lineup before the game started?
Yeah, I honestly I didn't have any problems with it. I feel like it's kind of seems like a normal lineup right now. A little bit for the Quakes,
Mm-hmm.
with the last three games, um, and especially obviously with the call ups for Vaco and Kashia. So I didn't expect any big changes, especially during the Galaxy game. So no, I had no problems with it.
Yeah, so I think this is a very good game to see Tanner Beeson get a W because he's had a bit of a rough start playing for the Quakes. It's tough when you're not seeing a lot of game time, and then you're thrust into a game where the your opponents are scoring a lot of goals and it could be demoralizing. But partic- combination of circumstances as well as mental resolve, we've seen Tanner Beeson take this opportunity well, and he seems like he's a center back that can be relied on, particularly when the more experienced center backs like Kashia and Alanis are unavailable. Even
Yeah,
though obviously it wasn't a clean sheet, but we'll get to finally a clean sheet in a second. I think this is a massive improvement for him. What do you think?
no, I totally agree. Actually, I was gonna we'll say later on. I figured because we always talk, you guys talk about the studs and the one dud. I mean,
Yeah,
my stud was gonna be Tanner Beeson. So I mean, I might as well say that he was my stud. I think he's starting to build consistency on the back line, and I also think he's. I think it's just great to see that we're actually getting a draft pick right away that's contributing right now. I mean, I think that's just huge. It feels like sometimes it just seems like it's been a while since Earthquakes have drafted somebody and they're making an immediate impact to the team. But yeah, it's just good to see that Beason's getting there out there and being consistent now.
right. Yeah, I think so too. And especially when you have a position in your roster that's been particularly either injury hit or players have been called up or whatever the case may be. It definitely helps to know that when everyone's healthy, your fourth choice center back can put in a good shift. And, if he continues to play this well, there's always a chance that even when those guys came back, Maeda might give him a game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, who knows at this point? I mean, I wouldn't want to change the lineup much, even when other players are healthy. I mean, if it's working, why change it? But we'll see what Almeida comes up with.
Yeah, and then briefly looking through the Galaxy lineup, we had former Earthquake David Bingham in goal, of course. The back line of Felcher, Steres, Depoy, and Depew. Yeah, I believe it's Depew and Insua, with Traore coming in for Insua. Then the center midfielders of Corona and Perry Kitchen. Then in the attacking mid and winger spots, you had Leggett, Dos Santos, and Pavone. And you had Hernandez up top with other attacking options such as Zubat and Kletstan coming off the bench. And this definitely doesn't look like a team you'd expect to be finished at the bottom of the conference. They had missed a few players, particularly Chicharito due to injuries. But yeah, there's a couple of experienced players, particularly in the midfield and forward. The defense doesn't look the best, and obviously we know how we feel about Bingham. But your thoughts on the Galaxy's struggles lately?
I just think their top name guys aren't producing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Dos Santos hasn't done much, and I obviously Chicharito hasn't done anything yet. I don't think he has scored yet, right?
Right. I don't think he has
Because
either. He
yeah,
might have
so I
had
mean,
one goal, but if even that is not what you'd expect for a player who has more or less been a productive player in every other club he's been at, except maybe Sevilla.
yeah, exactly. And obviously they're trying to fill in for, having Zlatan gone now. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is not part of that team, and he was, their big name. But and you bring in other guys that are, you think would produce, but it just hasn't been. Maybe it's just been a weird 2020 year, and they're kind of just going to chalk it up as a weird odd year for the Galaxy.
Yeah, Galaxy are one of those teams like the Sounders where if they don't make the playoffs, that they'll consider it a weird year or use some of their not necessarily excuse, well, maybe in this case it is an excuse, but more or less a reasoning for their struggles. Regarding the transition from Zlatan to Chicharito, Zlatan he scores all sorts of goals, whereas Chicharito he's kind of like Wondolowski, where he usually scores his goals within the 6 yard box, stuff like that. So it wasn't gonna be a like for like transition, but still on talent, he is at least a top five player in MLS when he's at his best. So I can understand why fans are losing their patience, just like when our players like Andy Rios weren't performing just a few games ago.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, especially for a big name like that. Yeah, I think Galaxy are probably really going at them.
Yeah, so look at the stats. Quakes with a very healthy 61% possession. They outshot the Galaxy 14-9 with a 6-1 advantage on shots on target. Yeah, Quakes had three, and the Galaxy had four yellow cards. One still weakness in the Quakes attack. They do find themselves offsides a little too often. They had four offside calls. The Galaxy's one. Pretty even with the corners, 4-3 with the Galaxy edge, which kind of makes the Galaxy's lack of shots on target look even worse because they had good opportunities off set pieces. And because there's the only shot on target for the Galaxy resulted in a goal. There was no saves for the Quakes, while the Galaxy were forced to make four saves. Pretty good overall performance for the Quakes based on these numbers.
Yeah, I mean the numbers show that we played an excellent game. Man, it's so I mean we can't complain about the numbers if that's what they're saying. But yeah, definitely the four offsides is a little thing of concern. But I think it's just they'll figure it out, kind of thing. With everything's
Yeah,
seems like it's changing with the Quakes right now. I mean, we're kind of in a different. It feels like a completely different team in a sense right now.
It's one of those things where if you had to look at anything, it's like Matias Almeida is telling his team something we got to work on in the next game against Vancouver. Try not to be offsides a little bit more. But if you do get 14 shots on target, 14 shots, sorry, that would be incredible, 14 shots on
Yeah,
target. If you get 14 shots total and 6 on target, you can live with maybe a few offside calls.
yeah, I totally agree.
And it doesn't matter where these two teams find themselves on the table. California Classico always produces a pretty interesting game. There were some twists and turns. There was some drama with the saved penalty. Both teams had their moments, and both teams are littered with players that rise to these sorts of occasions against rivals. So I feel like this is pretty good. I think it can be a little tempting to take these rivalry games for granted because due to this scheduling where you're facing a lot of the same opponents so many times, like Seattle and Portland have played each other what feels like 4 or 5 times, for example. It's easy to feel like these rivalry games aren't as special, but it's still, rivals are rivals.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a LA team, of course, and it was another classic Classico, in the sense that it was a close game, and I feel like most of the time they generally are, and there's always some dramatic thing coming down to the end.
Yeah, every time there's an LA game of some sort in professional sports, there's always that hashtag beat LA. But it seems like soccer is the only place that's happening right now. Baseball and basketball, those LA teams are looking formidable, but it feels good to beat them for sure. Whether it's a LAFC, but still particularly with the lengthy history, LA Galaxy.
Yeah, anytime you're playing LA team and you're from Northern California, it always feels good to beat LA.
Yeah, or San Diego, as I've learned. There's a bit of an interesting relationship with the Padres and Dodgers, but I won't go into too much detail. A few more details with this game, though. Andy Rios' first goal since the second game of the MLS's back tournament. Rios definitely needed that goal. He was not looking threatening at all for so many games. He looked lost out there. I think this was a great game for him to get back on track. Even if it was from the penalty spot, just seeing his name on the score sheet would do him a world of good.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was a confidence booster, and obviously we'll get into his second goal from the next game. But yeah, and I honestly was thinking who was going to take this penalty since Wando was subbed out. I was like, are they going to go to Rios? And they did. I honestly thought maybe they would go to Espinoza, and I don't know. I didn't know who they were going to take. I was like, once I was like, oh, penalty. I was like, where's Wando? And I was like, oh, he's not there. So or Mangus, Mangus is not there either. So those are the
Yeah,
two guys that were taking penalties for the Quakes, and they weren't in. So I definitely was curious. And well, it was Rios, and he answered, and I think it was a good confidence boost for him.
yeah, and another potential suspect to take a penalty was unavailable with Baco too, but I guess the circumstances worked out for Rios to get that much needed contribution. And speaking of contributions, Shea Salinas is responsible for two of the Quakes' biggest wins of the season at this point as well.
Yeah, I mean, Che has just been the perfect. I feel like he's been the perfect bench person to come off the bench for the Quakes. I mean, he always comes off and he always is impactful every time. I feel like, well, I don't know, it's not every time, but most of the time he comes off the bench. He's always done something. He's always in the mix, and he helps us win games. That was it's clear to see against the Galaxy.
Yeah, if Chris Wondolowski is the Captain Kirk aboard this ship, I think Shea Salinas is definitely Spock. They're two players you can't ask for better top two leaders right there.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Any other thoughts on this game before we go into one stud, one dud?
No, I mean, it's a great win. I mean, we needed to keep it rolling, and that's what we did.
All right. So my stud for this match had to be Marcos Lopez. He scored a banger of a goal, and I think it's one that I think he deserved. I think Marcos Lopez has been playing in a lot of these games where they've been losing by so many goals, but it's fair to say of any member of a back line in those sorts of games, couldn't really have faulted him for too many of those goals. So it was nice to see him show that he is a good player, which we all knew, by scoring a very crucial goal in this game. My dad, it was tough to pick. By default, it pains me to say I had to go with Chris Wondolowski because of the penalty that was saved by David Bingham. But I'm sure if this podcast was going on for the entirety of his career, there may be 2 or 3 duds max compared to hundreds of studs for Wando. So I hope he doesn't lose any sleep should he listen to this podcast.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, yeah, like I said a little earlier, mine was Tanner Beeson for my stud. Like I said, he's been playing consistent, and it's great to see that a rookie was going. My dud, I did write down my own notes. I'm gonna double down with you, and I'm gonna go with Chris Wondolowski as well. I know this is our opinion, and we need to give Chris Wondolowski a little hatred a little bit. We need Wando to put these goals in for us. We're at a team that doesn't get goals much, and to see Chris miss that it hurt a lot. But so that's why we're gonna give him the dud, and hopefully he can bounce back.
Yeah, there's no doubt though that the next day after that game, he probably spent a good amount of time in practice just shooting at one of the keepers, trying to make amends for that. But yeah, a
Yeah,
rare bad performance by Chris Wondolowski, but we still appreciate the good outweighs the bad by far with him.
yeah, of course, of course.
All right, so now we get to talk about the October 7th match 2 days ago, where the San Jose Earthquakes, they extended their win streak to 3 games with a 3-0 win over the Vancouver Whitecaps, continuing their homestand in what still remains to be not the best days for the field, so to speak. What do you think about the state of the field?
I don't know what's going on with that field. I did put that down. It's looking awful. I don't know what's going on. Something has to be happening to that pitch. I mean, it's awful. It looks spotty. It has these random patches. I'm like, when I was watching the game, I was like, what is going on? And everyone's just sliding and slipping. It looks terrible. I don't know what's going on, especially there shouldn't be any other games going on it. I have no clue why we can't produce a quality pitch, especially right now with we're the only ones using it.
Yeah, if my only explanation, if Pokemon existed, were they had a Diglett and Dugtrio infestation, but since we're in the real world, like that won't apply there. It just looks bad, and it's one of those things where like you'd expect that kind of thing from maybe an MLS stadium 10 to 15 years ago if it was shared with an NFL team or something, but there's no excuse, especially in the heart of Silicon Valley in San Jose. I'm not trying to say like everyone in San Jose is rich or anything, but if you're the San Jose Earthquakes, keyword San Jose, you got to show that you can produce a quality stadium, especially if the stadium boosts a lot of other useful features, such as a world's longest outdoor bar.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that we don't spend money on players, so why can't we just spend it on having a high quality pitch for the field? Like, I mean, we should be spending money on something then, right? If we're not doing it on the players, then spend it on the good quality field.
Yep. So we'll take a look at the goals summary as well as the red card history. So the first goal came in the 50th minute. It was Christian Espinoza, who has been getting a few assists lately. He's getting a goal this time to give them the lead. And then 2 minutes later, uh, Andy Rose is sent off. So the Whitecaps are down to 10 men. And then from there, it's all Earthquakes. 2-0, Andy Rios in the 66th minute. He's on a roll now. Eric Godoy, also known as the imposter, Godoy got a red card in the 75th minute. And then Paul Marie with his first ever MLS goal to put the icing on the cake, 3-0. Best performance of the season, probably by far, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely our best performance, and honestly, it's a team we should beat. I mean, by the numbers, it's a team that the Quakes should be taking care of business of. Obviously, in the MLS back tournament, we had a very interesting game. We did win, but this is what the game should have been back in the MLS back tournament. We should have been handling Vancouver Whitecaps, and that's what we did this game. And I mean, obviously, the red cards helped, but it definitely looked that we were coming out strong in the second half. Obviously, with Espinosa's early goal. And then the red cards definitely helped get us a couple more goals.
Right. And when I think of the Vancouver Whitecaps, I can't help but draw some parallels with the San Jose Earthquakes because on the West Coast, there are these trios of teams. There's the LAFC, LA Galaxy, and San Jose Earthquakes, where a lot of the attention goes to the LA teams. And then up in the Pacific Northwest, there's Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver. And Seattle and Portland get a lot of the attention too. And for the most part, it is merited. Those clubs that are getting more attention have been more successful in recent years. But Vancouver Whitecaps also, like, they've had some good quality players. They obviously produced Alphonso Davies, and they had the Korean player Hwang In-bom, who's now at Rubin Kazan in the Russian Premier League. But they've also been not making the type of business that you think they should with all the talented players that are leaving and the players that they currently have. Like, there's some good players in there, but they're asking a lot of this squad rather than strengthening it as much as they should, which is something Quakes fans can relate to as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, like Seattle and Portland would get more attention because they also have been winning. They have won championships recently, so they're definitely getting
Yeah,
more attention.
of course. Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't too long ago where the Whitecaps were in a playoff mix. I mean, the Quakes faced them in 2017, so it's not like this team was, been completely bad lately. But now they're obviously in a big transitional phase, new coach, if I'm not mistaken, and they're kind of just going through it, just like most MLS teams kind of feel like they always kind of go through it. They're hot for a second, and then it's a big change.
Yep, and if you even want to go further back in their earliest days, they were making the playoffs pretty early into their MLS tenure, and they made the LA Galaxy team with the likes of Robbie Keane and David Beckham and Landon Donovan work for that playoff win. So the Whitecaps aren't strangers to the playoffs. They've seen better days, and this is definitely a day to forget for them. Probably not as bad as their 6-0 loss, I believe it was, to LAFC, but still no end in sight for them as the Quakes were in a similar position not too long ago.
Yeah, I think they're just having issues finding goals and just finding consistency with their lineup and just with their team in general. I think their coach is trying, but I think right now they're definitely struggling.
And when you're down to 9 players, there's only so much you can do. There was a game in the MLS's back tournament where the Colorado Rapids, they managed to score a goal against Sporting Kansas City to make it 2-2 when they were down to 9 players. Jonathan Lewis was incredible in that game. They eventually lost it 3-2 with the stoppage time goal for Sporting Kansas City, but examples like that are few and far between. It's essentially like you just want the game to be over as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, once you lose the first man, it's already tough. And then once they score another goal, they're 2-0 and you're down a man, and then you're down a third or down a second one. It just as icing on the cake. It's just adding on to a struggling season for the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yep. So, brief rundown of the lineups. So, Quakes were starting Marcinkowski in goal for a consecutive game, thankfully. The back line was Nick Lima, Youngworth, Beeson, and Tommy Thompson at left back. And then you had Jedson and Ewell in midfield. Ahead of them, you had Espinoza, Wondolowski, and Fierro with Rios in the forward line. The subs that came on were Paul Marie, Kate Cowell, Shea Salinas, and two faces that we haven't seen a whole lot of, Siad Haji and Gilbert Fuentes. Were you excited to see those players get some minutes?
Yeah. I mean, we did see. I feel like we saw Fuentes earlier in the season, so obviously it's always good to
Mm-hmm.
see him get some more numbers, get some minutes. I don't believe we've seen Haji at all. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's great to see that. I mean, he was a draft pick 2 years ago. I don't think out of VCU. So it was really
Mm-hmm.
good to see that he got some minutes. Hopefully, there'll be more soon to come. And we drafted him. Hopefully, it's going to be something productive very soon.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, due to this situation they're in, they're playing so many games that you hope that French players or young players get the opportunity to at least see the field for 10 to 15 minutes, whatever it may be, if not a little bit more. And can be demoralizing as a player if you're going this deep in the season and this is your first game, but that's the reality of how some rosters are constructed. But it's nice to see that the Quakes, especially as the young players that are getting game time, are impressing more and more, that opens the door for more of them. Because if players from your youth academy or that you drafted are contributing, then it makes you feel more confident in giving other players in similar situations those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can start to realize that the homegrown system for the Quakes is kind of building. In a sense, we've been seeing a lot of homegrown players starting to play and starting to produce, and that's always great to see, right?
Yeah. The Whitecaps lineup that they used, Evan Bush was in goal. Their back line was Nowinski, Godoy, Rose, and Ali Adnan. So both their center backs were sent off in this game, and they had to do a little bit of reshuffling with their substitutions. Dejome, Owusu, Baldissimo, and Tybert, the Canadian international, were the midfield. So it was a 4-4-2 with St. Ricketts and Freddie Montero up top. So if this game were to remain 0-0 at halftime and they didn't get sent off, I think that there's certainly a couple players here capable of scoring some goals, but overall, this is definitely not a MLS roster that fans are clamoring for.
No, definitely not. I think they're also expecting a lot more from, I believe, Milinkovic. If I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
they got him not too long ago, and I think they got him right before the MLS Backcoast tournament. I think they were
Right.
definitely expecting a lot more from him, but obviously he's coming off the bench, so I think maybe he still hasn't really figured out their system yet. But I think they were definitely expecting a lot more from him than what they're getting right now.
Yeah. And it was interesting. So the former Quakes goalkeeper Brian Meredith was on the bench. There was the young goalkeeper Tom Hasal. He had a great game in the MLS's back tournament. Obviously, he's still very inexperienced. So when you have a player like Evan Bush who's been around the league for so long, it's still easier to rely on him for most of your games. To not see Hasal even on the bench was a bit surprising for me. But overall, I think Vancouver Whitecaps are definitely gonna reassess their squad at the end of the season, and as is the case sometimes with MLS teams that don't reach the playoffs, they may look completely different the next season. Like Chicago Fire, when we played them in the MLS back tournament, I believe they had anywhere from like 10 to 12 like completely new players on their team between 2019 and 2020. So that could be on the cards for them as well.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, definitely could be a possibility.
Yeah. So the first half definitely told a different story than the final result. JT Marcinkowski had to make a few good saves to ensure that the Whitecaps wouldn't take the lead. I believe, yeah, they had 6 shots in the first half with 5 on target, and it definitely was surprising. It felt like the beginning of the game in MLS's back tournament, where despite seeming like the weaker team, which they ultimately proved to be, that they were coming out of the gates on fire and looking dangerous.
Yeah, they definitely were. They were definitely putting pressure on the Quakes. It definitely was getting a little worrisome that hey, they might actually put one in the back of the net. But fortunately enough, JT made some great saves, and we kind of had that bendo break kind of defensive approach in the beginning of at least the first 25 to 30 minutes of the first half. But overall, we didn't concede a goal, so it was good.
Yeah, was it me or did it feel like to you that Jetson felt like he was appearing more in the final third, in the attacking third, in this game compared to some others?
Yeah, it felt like the Quakes were having actually a good, at least also the end of that first half was they were having a good counterattack. Because
Mhm.
Vancouver was pressuring up a lot, and it looked like we were actually making some good counterattacks. And Judson was kind of felt like was the fortunate one to kind of break out for us to actually push the ball up the field on the counterattacks, and he actually had to go some good chances, but obviously he didn't find the back of the net.
Yeah, the breakthrough did come early in the second half with Nick Lima combining nicely with Christian Espinoza for a deserved goal from one of the most informed Quakes. Espinoza has definitely been the heartbeat of this attack, and I think as much as you expect assists from your wingers or attacking midfielders, sometimes more than goals. Goals are pretty appreciated as well, as we mentioned before.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Espinoza is like pretty much, I would say, the heart of this team. If we don't have Espinoza, I don't know where the Quakes would be properly. But yeah, so it was great to see him putting that. He's always putting good shots on, and he's always in the mix. So it was great to see him put one, finally in goal.
Yep, and two of the more criticized Quakes were combining for the second goal, with Fierro assisting Andy Rios. So this feels like the beginning of a redemption arc for the two of them, particularly Andy Rios, because we have seen a lot more of him than Carlos Fierro. So there has been a larger sample size and more reasons to not be sold on him as a player. Maybe even not yet, perhaps, but right now, 2 goals in 2 games, you'd be happy with that from any striker.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're hoping this keeps building momentum for him, and he just actually keeps scoring more and more goals. And that's what we're gonna need from him.
Yeah, what really killed this game for the Whitecaps is both their red cards were very soon after um, goals that were scored, and there's never a good time to get a red card, but certainly not in those circumstances either. Kit Cowell had a good chance to make it 3-0 before Paul Marie's eventual goal. Um, Evan Bush, he did the best he could in an impossible situation, but it was too little too late at that point. Uh, do you think that this goal also maybe helps Paul Marie's case a bit for more minutes in this team?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it? If you're getting quality goals from somebody that can actually come in and make a productive, productive bench player. We need goals from anyone and anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
if Paul Murray's the guy, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation because the prospects of both left back and right back are looking pretty good. I'd say that if you had the option of everybody, you'd still want Marcos Lopez on the left and Nick Lima on the right. But especially this season where you're allowed 5 substitutes, and maybe you don't have 5 forward/midfield players you want to use those substitutes on every game. Why not try to sub in one of those fullbacks like Paul Marie, re-energize that position, one of the most physically taxing positions because of how much you're involved in both attack and defense. It's not a bad idea if you're the Quakes.
Yeah, and I won't be surprised if they do it. I think Almeida is a coach that will do whatever he kind of pleases, and if that's what he feels like, I think Almeida would make that move.
Yeah, and in terms of reacting to this game, I wrote an article for MLS Multiplex following the LAFC win, calling for a optimistic but calm approach for the Quakes fan base after that first win in so long, and also noting that even though it was against LAFC, this was an LAFC team that was struggling at the time. They're currently not like near the top of the standings as many expect them to be. And granted, this Vancouver Whitecaps team as well, they're probably not making the playoffs at this rate, although it's still up for grabs. I think regardless of who you get your win against, you gotta feel a little bit good about it, especially after coming off so many big losses.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feel great about it. I mean, every Quakes fan should be loving that we're up. We're on a winning streak of three. I mean, it looked like we were gonna keep just losing. Honestly, it looked so bad. There's so many bad games. We didn't know when we were gonna get out of it. And right now we are out of it, and we're just hoping that we can keep staying consistent, and we can keep winning games.
Yeah, it was. This team is very Jekyll and Hyde. I think we're seeing some consistency in the short term in this span of 3 games, but it can all change in an instant. And that's maybe not just a reflection of who the Quakes are as a team, but just how many games are being played in quick succession and how MLS is as a league right now with so many teams that are they're making smarter signings and that are really reinforcing this reputation of parity.
Yeah, definitely.
So one stud, one dud. Who do you have, Will? Since I went first last time.
All right. Well, I was thinking obviously the obvious choice was JT, but I had to go a little bit differently. I'm gonna go with Jackson Ewell. Yep,
Okay.
he didn't score, but he didn't do much that day. But I'm going to just because he signed that dotted line for us. I think it was a big day for him. It was Jackson Ewell Day. He signed that contract extension, and that's what every Quake fan should be really hyped about. Plus the win, it was definitely a great day for Quakes fans all around.
Yep. I think Jackson Ewell is definitely a player that, if the Quakes do make that transition into being a constant playoff bound and potentially MLS contending, hopefully someday winning team, Jackson Ewell could still be in that team because he's got bags of potential. He's already playing pretty well. He's getting a lot of MLS experience under his belt, good experience and good performances. And he's definitely a player that just looks out of place on a team that's losing by so many goals as they were earlier in the season. So I'm glad things seem to be getting on track for the Quakes and for him.
Yeah, definitely. And my dud is going to be Carlos Fierro.
Mm-hmm.
He did get assist, but I feel like he had a lot of more chances to score a goal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like he missed a lot of chances. And for him, this is, big minutes for him, obviously, with Vaco out. Playing for the Georgia national team, I think Carlos Fierro really needed to show why he should be out there more often. And I mean, the assist did help, but I feel like he had a lot more opportunities to score, which is what we want more of. And unfortunately, he didn't produce enough, so he's going to be my dud.
Right. He's another one where he's in a Paul Marie situation where he's showing that he's a capable player, but because of the presence of players like Vaco and Espinoza, and I'll even say Cade Cowell, that it's going to get tougher and tougher to get minutes, but he will get some at some point, just maybe not the starts that he might be after once Vaco is back from international duty.
Yeah.
My stud was JT Marcinkowski, of course. This is a clean sheet. I believe he got one last season, so but still, this is definitely his first clean sheet of the season. Might be the first clean sheet for the Quakes this season, not counting MLS's back tournament. And I think that shows that he is winning that number one spot. He's playing back-to-back games, and he is making big saves in big moments. So can't ask for much more from a starting goalkeeper. And I'm glad JT Marcinkowski seems to be getting that role, which I think he deserves.
Yeah, and I hope. I think we're at a point where he should be keeping his starting job. I don't think this should be changing anytime soon. And I think Matthias is gonna keep JT in there for probably the rest of the season.
Yeah, and my dad, again, it was really tough to pick. I'm going to go with Jitson. It's not his job to score goals, but he needs to do better when he's in attacking positions. So there's going to be times in crucial games where he happens to be the guy with the ball at his feet, and you need to take a shot then and now, otherwise the opportunity goes. And if you're on the field, regardless of what position you are, except I guess if you're a goalkeeper, but you probably wouldn't be in that position too often anyway, that you gotta at least test the goalkeeper sometimes. And I don't think Jetson is capable of doing that too often. And thankfully, this was just against the Whitecaps, so it wasn't quite as crucial.
No, definitely wasn't crucial, but it's something we would love to see him at least be, against a team that is not as good and get him some chances, get him some confidence. We need to see that he's actually, could be a threat a little bit. So that's what we want. We want him to be,
Mm-hmm.
threatening, and hopefully, sometimes he might score for us.
All right, so that was a pretty good week for San Jose Earthquakes. Wrapped up there. Let's get into some fan questions. First up, we have Salam Amath on Facebook asks, "Why is the pitch so terrible?" And I think we covered this. And unfortunately, your guess is as good as mine, Salam. We can't really think of a good reason, Will, right?
No, I have no clue. I think we need to find somebody to answer this question for us, or we got to get somebody in Quakes media to really figure this out for us. But yeah, the pitch is terrible, and we need to figure out why we can't get a better one.
Yeah. At Ironguti10 on Twitter asks, "Why did it take Almeida so long to trust JT Marcinkowski when Vega lost by large margins so many times?" I believe that this is because Almeida is the type of player that if type of coach where if you become a starter in his eyes, that he really buys into you, and he's managed long enough to know that you're going to lose a few games by multiple goals at some point in your career. It happened to Liverpool and Manchester United on the weekend in the Premier League. But I guess he just really believed in Daniel Vega even when no one else did. But he finally saw what everyone else saw, and I think he's got to be happy with the decision to give JT Marcinkowski the number one role right now.
Yeah, I think also with how Almeida's defensive system is, he kind of was not surprised that they sometimes this would happen and teams will figure it out and score a lot of goals. I mean sometimes we're definitely some Vega's fault. We definitely could think sometimes where Vega made some awful plays and goals that shouldn't have gone in definitely went in. But I think overall he probably wasn't thinking that it mostly wasn't his fault. He probably was thinking that it was the defense's fault or the lack of the fault in his system. So he probably wasn't trying to blame Vega for any of that. So he's still trying to get him to get out there and get a good start. But unfortunately, Vega couldn't produce. And JT came out and has shown why he should be the starting goalkeeper for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and everyone has that where we have our favorite goalkeepers, and if one of our favorite goalkeepers happens to lose by a large margin, we tend to want to blame the defense as much as possible more than the keepers themselves. But you can only be on the team sheet for so many of those losses before you lose your spot because eventually the coach has to try something different. You have players on the squad, and something had to give.
Yeah.
Mel at Mel underscore Custodius or Custodicus asks, "Why was Magnus Eriksson transferred before another player was signed?" And he also asked, "Why did it take JT so long? And why did it take Almeida so long for JT to get starting roles?" Um, there's a lot of questions on that topic, but we'll
Yeah.
focus on the Eriksson question because right now it seems like with Eriksson gone, Almeida is settling on Yule and Jitson to be the center midfielders, where Magnus Eriksson saw a lot of play, although he could also play winger at times, could play cam. Do you think that the players, based on what we've seen in these last few games, that they're showing that they can handle life without Eriksson, or do you think that Eriksson is still a player that needs to be replaced?
At first it looked like, wow, we needed Erickson. It looked
Hmm.
like we, as a team, we didn't know how to play without Mangus. Um, but now it obviously looks like we're kind of finally figuring it out. And I don't know if it was because we lost Erickson that we were just playing so bad and we just couldn't gel properly. But I mean, us to sign somebody, I mean, this is the Quakes we're talking about here. I mean, it's very hard
Hmm.
for us to get a signee, really. I mean, when I yesterday when they or the other day when they said, "Oh, we have some big news," I was of like a signee. I was like, "Oh, what could it be?" They actually got a player, and I was like, "Oh no, it's Jackson Yule." Well, we'll take that, but we thought, I thought maybe
Yeah,
possibly could be somebody, but no, I mean, it's so hard to think that the Quakes are really going to go out there and sign somebody for a transfer. But I think we're finally figuring it out without Mangus, and hopefully we could just stay consistent at this point.
yeah. I think at this point, this is the squad that the San Jose Earthquakes are going to work with for the rest of the season, and it's going to be up to Judson and Yule to perform their respective midfield roles, which is asking a lot because they have two completely different roles in this Earthquakes team. But in a team that doesn't make too many signings like the San Jose Earthquakes, a contract extension can almost feel like a signing because you're locking in an important player to be a piece for the future. And obviously, this might not stop a bigger team, particularly in Europe, from eventually wanting to sign Jackson Yule. But it's great to see that he seems very committed to the San Jose Earthquakes, and in a time where it's not the most fashionable club to be committed to, it means a lot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to have Jackson stay here for now is a
Mm-hmm.
huge boost to this team.
Yeah. Burrito with three O's on Discord asks us to analyze how Rios has improved from transitioning from a number nine role to more of a distributor. So, based on the formations I'm seeing on MLS.com and ESPN, it does seem like Rios appears to be playing still as the number nine role, as the furthest guy up the field, but he is doing a little bit more of dropping back, and combining with other players, and making things happen in different ways, which is working because he's getting goals and he is being more of a contributor rather than being a liability. Why do you think he's been able to succeed more?
Honestly, it might be just because the Quakes are playing better. Because
Mhm.
I mean, we were talking about, or you, excuse me, you and Favi were talking about earlier in another podcast how Rios just seems to be lazy. He seems to be playing, half-assed. He's not really, being very
Mhm.
productive, with the team. But now, since the Quakes are winning and they're being productive, you're seeing Rios actually really want to contribute and see that what this team can actually be. So it could just be strictly that we finally are producing the way we should be, and maybe now he's actually kind of buying in a little bit more than he was after the MLS back tournament.
Yeah. So maybe Rios's role in this squad is the Quakes barometer, where if he plays well, the team plays well. If he doesn't play well, the team won't play well. Telltale will need a bit more of a sample size. Maybe there's going to be a game where the Quakes win and he misses two or three easy chances, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. We'll see. I mean, you see him on the field. He's a very emotional type of player. He can see all of his emotions on his face on how he's doing and how he's feeling out there. So we'll definitely see what happens when we have a game where he's not contributing on the score sheet and we're winning games.
Yep. Ryan on Discord asks, what are the Quakes' ceiling this season? Can they make the playoffs? And if so, is a first round exit or could they stun someone? And my first reaction to this question is, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's pump the brakes here because I'm excited about the Quakes and how as everyone else is, but I want to set an expectation for them because there's still some tougher opponents left on the schedule, and it's still not done and dusted yet. I think the Quakes are certainly capable of being in the playoffs, but after that, it would honestly not surprise me if it's a quick exit, but as I've said a few times, and I think a lot of fans agree, that playoffs is the minimum expectation for this season. If they make the playoffs, then that's good enough, at least for this season. If they make the playoffs this season and then the next few seasons, no signings are made, and then they continue to exit early in the playoffs, then that could become a problem. But for right now, we don't have the luxury of being that greedy.
Yeah, our expectations, I mean, should be every season for any team is to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the Quakes, is make the playoffs, and that's what we should be. That's where the ceiling should be for the Quakes is to make the playoffs this season. They have a chance to do it. We do play some teams that we should win against, and yes, you did mention the harder teams, but we'll see. There is 8 teams that make the playoffs this 2020 season, so it gives us more of a chance to make it. And I think you never know. We could shock somebody as long as we don't play Minnesota, because it seems like every time we play Minnesota, it's no good. But you never know. We could shock somebody.
Yeah, it's 8 teams from the Western Conference and 10 teams from the Eastern Conference because of the unbalanced conference distributions this season. But yeah, that's even in a Western Conference where I think you'd still give the edge to the Western Conference overall, although there's some great Eastern Conference teams we'll talk about later briefly. That finishing eighth out of 12 is definitely something that this club is capable of, and we'll see if they can keep this going.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and next up we have Andy at Andy underscore Mikey underscore Thom on Twitter. He had a bit of a barrage of questions. I really appreciate the enthusiasm. These are the ones I picked out. So first up, and I'll let you answer these first, and then I'll contribute. Whether do you think the team is playing better because of JT?
Yeah, I mean, of course. When you're having, obviously, I mean, JT's game yesterday was a clear start of, I mean, of why we were playing better. I mean, he had a clean sheet, plus he helped us with that whole first half. Even the games before, just getting the saves when we need them, and just not conceding more goals than we have been lately. So of course, I mean, we are been playing better because of JT, 100%, no question.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't attribute all of Quake's success to him because it's been an all-around improvement, but it definitely makes games more winnable when your goalkeeper is reliable.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I did give him maybe a little more praise than I should, but I mean, when we got out of Vega and we were losing games by like it seemed like 1,000 goals, definitely I gave a little GT a little more love.
Yeah, we conceded a touchdown at CenturyLink Field, and we're not the Raiders.
Yeah, exactly.
Number two of his questions. There's four total. Did Gilbert and Haji show enough to earn more minutes? What do you think?
I mean, right off the bat, no. I think it's
Yeah.
just you can't. There's been like they played with 4 or 5 minutes at most, maybe even less. But it's just not enough. It's not enough minutes to show anything on a 3-0 game. It was just nice that Matthias even considered putting them out there. To be quite honest, and with Vaco and the rest of them coming back off international duties, it's going to be really tough to get Fuentes or Haji back in there. Maybe more Fuentes than Haji, just because
Mm-hmm.
we've seen Fuentes already prior,
Yeah.
but still, it's still going to be very tough for both of them to get any minutes. Maybe we might if we play the Whitecaps again, and or if we're winning by a lot again, maybe we'll see some more minutes out of them. But right off the top of the head, I don't think they'll be coming in anytime soon.
Yeah, I think Fuentes definitely seems to be more on the right track of breaking into the first team more often, maybe appearing in more 18-man team sheets for next season. But still a long road ahead of them, even with the absence of Magnus Eriksson in that midfield depth chart. And they played because, partially, I assume, they went into a game where the Quakes were up 3-0 and they were up against 9 men. So they could. There's a great situation to play young players because you're not setting them up to fail, but at the same time, it won't tell you too much as to whether or not they'll be able to perform well off the bench against a tougher opponent.
Yeah, exactly.
So next up, do you think the red cards to Godoy and Rose were fair or harsh? I'd probably say that they were fair.
Yeah, I definitely thought the first one was fair. I think that was Rose was the
Mm-hmm.
first one to get the card. I definitely thought that one was fair. The second one was a little borderline. I mean, he definitely was trying to get at Yule. If I
Mm-hmm.
believe right, it was Yule that he was kind of getting at. It looked that one could have. I would have been 50-50 kind of on that one. But I mean, obviously, we'll take it against a guy that's trying to get out of one of our top players. We don't want to see anyone trying to go at Jackson like that. So, well, overall, I'm fine with the red card.
Yeah, I'm fine with the red card. I think I agree. The first one was definitely more merited. Um, as a neutral, you probably wouldn't want a second red card in any case, but sometimes it happens, and you just have to, as a coach, it's something you have to work on when that happens. Like when we go down to 10 men, which is not something that you practice for, but you need to focus even more on just doing your job, making smart tackles, and not getting baited. I'm not saying that you will baited him, but not taking any bait that comes in those situations because it's just slippery slope.
Yeah, and I felt like Godoy was actually kind of frustrated. Honestly, it
Yeah.
was more of a
Oh yeah.
frustration red card than but getting baited into anything. I think it was just more of
Yeah.
his frustrations, kind of just with a tough season for Vancouver. I think that just kind of boiled over for Godoy there.
All right, and then lastly from Andy, the bad pitch. Is it more embarrassing, more of a home field advantage, or both?
I'm gonna go with both. I think
Yeah.
I think it's embarrassing to have that bad of a pitch, and I think it is an advantage because we're the ones playing on it the most. So we should kind of know where things are gonna come, breaks or where the field's worse at. So I'm gonna go with definitely both. It will definitely help us, but it also at the same time it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. It's not great for the Quakes because if you're trying to sign players, they're not going to want to play there if it looks like that. And it's not great for the league because MLS is going for this like MLS 3.0 vibe where more and more teams are getting their own more modern stadiums. And then you see this, and I guess I'm kind of used to this, and I'm not as mad about it as some other people would because as an A's fan, we're used to our baseball field being considered one of the worst, if not the worst, in Major League Baseball. But even by that standard, like that needs to be fixed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, for at least, yeah, definitely needs to get fixed more rather than later. And then as far as for the A's go, I mean, their field, at least on the field, looks better than what the Quakes are putting out there for sure.
Right. We got two more uh, listeners contributing questions. This one comes from Jeff at Jeff_Vicus on Twitter. He asks, how long will this good run of form last? Does picking up these wins give Jesse/ownership an excuse not to spend and improve on the squad? So I'll take a brief peek at the next few games we have here before we address this question. So we got Timbers away, then the Galaxy away, and the Sounders at home. So the level of difficulty will be going up, so it'll be tough to keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, definitely playing Timbers away is going to be a tough start. But it's hopefully we're just going to ride this wave, with 3 wins under our belt in a row. Hopefully we can figure out. I feel like it's going to be kind of what we saw in the beginning of the Vancouver Whitecaps game. I feel like the Timbers are going to come out pretty hot. We're going to have to kind of weather the storm. Hopefully we answer back. I really liked our counterattack where it was at, and hopefully we can try to find a goal in there, a few, and stay. Not concede a lot of goals, obviously.
Yeah, I don't expect to win all three of the next three games, but even against some of the bigger teams in the Western Conference, particularly the Cascadia duo, um, I would say trio, but Whitecaps aren't in that tier. Uh, I think that a draw is not out of the realm of possibility, but a win might be a bridge too far, even for this good Quakes team playing as well as they are. And as for the results affecting the ownership's perception of things, what do you think of that?
I don't think there's going to be much of anything. I,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
I think we've just been there as Quakes fans. Like you should know that ownership, regardless of how the Quakes do, they don't go crazy on signing people in general. I mean, it's just been what it is. We kind of just have to deal with it, and we're just hoping that they finally, it will just change. I think we're at a point where we just hope and see that maybe the ownership will spend for once.
yeah, this is an ownership that when they were winning, they weren't spending money. When they're losing, they weren't spending money. When they're not playing due to COVID, they're not spending money. It doesn't matter. Like they're gonna do the bare minimum, I think.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate for all Quakes fans, and it's been for a long time.
Yeah, and we're not expecting to sign the same caliber of players in terms of reputation as teams from New York or LA or Atlanta or Florida, but we are also expecting them to make similar amount and quality of signings as teams like FC Dallas or Philadelphia Union or stuff like that. Granted, they're also getting a lot of players coming through their youth systems, but still, like they're not just settling for what they have.
Yeah, we're just hoping we sign somebody and somebody productive. It just
Mm-hmm.
seems far in between when we don't sign anyone. It just doesn't seem like we get anyone ever. So it's
Yeah,
hopefully we do sometime soon.
yeah. We talked with Andres Imperial a few weeks ago on the podcast, and I was a little surprised, but also very happy that he said how excited he was to play for San Jose Earthquakes to play in MLS when the offer came to him, and I do hope that there's someone else out there, like even if they play in some random league, like even the Thai league or something. I'm just coming up with a country that if they're good enough, they want to play for the Quakes, come join us.
Yeah, I mean, every Quakes fan should be open to an idea of anyone coming to help us win games and try to win an MLS Cup.
Yeah. Lastly, we have a couple questions from Eric Tran on Twitter. So the first one, he asked, were the expectations given both the resurgence and the caliber of players? Um, So, and to make this different from the similar question that we had earlier, if you had to guess where the Quakes might finish this season, maybe even like a range of places, where you think is most likely?
The high, I'm shooting like sixth, and
Okay.
if not, I'm shooting up between sixth and eighth. I think the Quakes, with this resurgence, should be good enough to make the playoffs this season, and with the
Yeah,
rest of
I
the
think.
schedule we have
Go,
left, I think
go
as well.
ahead.
Sorry. I was saying with the least, what the schedule looks like for the rest of the season, I think it's very doable.
Yeah, my bad. I thought you were finishing a thought there, but that's okay. That's very good points. I am thinking sixth would be great, but I feel like the Quakes might be teetering that line a bit, that playoff line down the stretch. It could be seventh and eighth, or maybe, something goes horribly wrong, ninth or 10th. I don't see them at the bottom because that would involve probably both the Galaxy and the Whitecaps to win a lot of their remaining games. But I think anything can happen. And that's a scary but exciting feeling.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited where we're at right now. I mean, we are
Mm-hmm.
in a playoff spot right now, and we're just hoping we can just keep winning some games here and stay there.
So, his last question: do you think the fan base will finally start to turn around on Andy Rios with his solid form recently, or do you think the jury's still out? Do you think there's still going to be a good amount of skeptics that are like, okay, we need to see this a lot more often?
Well, we definitely need to see it a lot more often. But if he keeps scoring, I think it will clearly, quietly shut up the haters. I think, obviously, if he's producing and he's scoring goals, what we expected from him from the beginning, I think the Quakes fans will slowly start, hopping on the Rios bandwagon now, since we've hated on Rios so much. I think everyone's going to be a bandwagoner. I don't know if there's a Quake that's been like, oh, I've been an Andy Rios diehard, the whole time. So about how he's been playing. So we'll see.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see if the Andy Rios burner account on Twitter changes his tune. His most recent tweet is in a reply to the halftime score. The Daniel Vega burner account said, "Get Rios off the effing field," and Andy Rios's burner replied, "Hey, sad emoji."
Yeah, I mean that whoever that is really having a good time. But I mean now he's kind of answering a little bit. So yeah, I mean that's they're having a little too much fun with that. But we'll see. Hopefully
Yeah.
Rios keeps answering those ones.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that they're only at the 8 followers, and I'm one of those 8. But we'll see. I think that those kinds of things just can only enrich the culture of Quake's Twitter.
Yeah, and it's something we like to see and enjoy.
All right, so let's take a bit of a macro look at the league right now. So, the MLS standings. On the Eastern Conference, we have Toronto on top with 34 points, followed by the pack of Union in second, Crew in third, and Orlando City in fourth. And then next up, we have this group with New York City FC, 26 points in fifth, New England Revolution with 22 points in sixth, and then both the Red Bulls and Impact on 20 points. And then those last two playoff spots in the East, since 10 out of 14 teams will make the playoffs, are Atlanta United and Nashville, both with 18 points. Below the playoff line, you have Chicago on 16, Inter Miami with 14, FC Cincinnati not last with 13, and DC United, who recently fired Ben Olsen, with 11 points. Anything stand out to you on the Eastern Conference, Will?
I think the big topic we need to address is that for Inter Miami, I mean, getting Higuain, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
I mean, what a big signing for them. Obviously, Mr. Beckham, David Beckham, there is trying to use his good looks to bring players in. I think we'll see what Inter can do. I mean, it'll be of course we want to see the MLS playoffs. We want to see Higuain in there. So hopefully Inter can get up there and at least make a run for it for the playoffs. And well, that's my big take from there. Obviously, that free kick goal probably was great to see for most MLS fans as well.
yeah. Gonzalo Higuain was definitely a player that was expected to. He was linked with MLS for so long because his brother played for Columbus Crew for many years. It's similar to how Giovanni Dos Santos, he played for the Galaxy, and he was able to get his brother Jonathan Dos Santos to make the switch from Villarreal to Galaxy. But now that it's finally happened, he has not disappointed. He's already had some lows, like missing a penalty and like getting into a fight, and he's already had a high of scoring a game winner for Inter Miami. So I think Inter
Yeah,
Miami fans, owned by David Beckham, they expected stars, and they've got it.
yeah. Obviously, I already forgot about his little his mess up with that whole penalty and that whole little fight thing. Because that free kick was just so good. I already forgot about that.
Oh yeah, I think Higuain is still a bit of an easy scapegoat ever since his miss in the 2014 World Cup final and his unfortunate track record in cup finals for club and country. But there's no denying he's a great player, and he's a player that we're happy to see in MLS.
Yeah, exactly.
On to the Western Conference. You have Seattle Sounders up top with 30 points, followed by their rivals, Portland Timbers, on 27 points. Sporting Kansas City close behind them with 26 points, home of Alan Pulido, who I'm still surprised. Like, why not come to the Earthquakes instead of Kansas City? But then we got Minnesota United 23. LAFC starting to find their footing a bit. They're in fifth place with 21 points, level with FC Dallas, so the Dallas have a worse goal difference. San Jose Earthquakes, they're a bit fortunate and precarious, but they're at seventh place with 20 points. Eighth place in that final playoff spot are the currently stagnant Colorado Rapids on 19 points, several games in hand due to COVID postponements. Below the playoff line, also on 19 points, of Houston Dynamo, who are probably not happy that Rapids are above them with so many games in hand. Then Real Salt Lake with 18, Vancouver Whitecaps with 15 points, LA Galaxy bringing up the rear in 15 points as well. So, what are your thoughts on the Western Conference standings?
Well, I mean, first off, every Quake fan should be excited that we're even in the mix at this point. Um,
Of
but
course.
yeah, I mean, we should be happy about it. I mean, but it just shows how close it is. I mean, even in the Eastern Conference, I mean, a lot of teams are close. So anything could happen in this final stretch of games. So, which is the scary part. There's no real separation from the top to really the bottom. Honestly, if anyone goes on a run, you never know what could really happen when these playoff standings are going to be at. And obviously with Colorado having so many games in hand, how's that's going to work out? We'll see how it works out. It might be in their favor, it might not be, but we're gonna definitely find out. And we just got to keep on pushing. We can start getting keep winning. Maybe get some draws here and there. Just stay off the losing train.
Yeah, and I guess when you're only 3 points behind Minnesota United in fourth, your prediction or your range that maybe fifth or sixth is achievable is definitely not out of the realms of possibility, but it's going to be a wild finish, particularly in the Western Conference Finals. I can already tell.
Yeah, I mean it's probably good little saying of the Wild West, and I think that's what's going to be right now for the MLS. Right now, it's going to be I mean, even
Yeah,
in the East, I think everything's going to be. We don't know how it's going to end. Honestly, I couldn't say that any team that's on the top right now for Seattle will stay at the top right now, or as far as even for Toronto, I wouldn't say they're safe either to being first. There's no one guaranteed right now in their spots.
yeah. I accidentally said Western Conference Finals because basketball is a little bit on my mind right now
Yeah,
as we're recording on this during the time that the Heat and the Lakers are playing Game 5. But you get the idea. It's going to be an epic battle for all these Western Conference teams. And you're right about Eastern Conference too, because while I still think that Western Conference overall is better, I think the Eastern Conference is closing the gap. And I think that maybe their top six teams are stronger right now than the top six in the West at times. So it's definitely a bit blurred.
yeah, definitely.
And we'll just take a quick look at the MLS Power Rankings from ESPN. These are accurate as of Monday, October 5th. So this didn't take into account the 3-0 win over the Vancouver Whitecaps. I won't read them all off, just a few of the highlights. Toronto is in first. It's actually an all-Eastern Conference first through fourth, with Timbers and Sounders up in 5 and 6. LAFC is in the middle of the pack in 12th. Quakes are in 17th out of 26th. They're in between Sporting Kansas City in 16th. Sporting Kansas City, who I imagine will probably move up in the next power rankings, and Atlanta United in 18th. And then you have teams like the Whitecaps in 22, Inter Miami 23, Galaxy 24, and then bring up the rear Cincinnati and DC. And I think right now that's a perfect, especially before the Whitecaps game. I'm totally satisfied with 17th in power rankings. When the next power rankings come around, and just double checking the schedule, we'll probably also include the Timbers game coming up. Where do you think, just on the Whitecaps game alone, you'd put the Quakes in the power rankings?
With the Whitecap game, I probably would put us around like 15th, 16th. Maybe the
Mm-hmm.
highest I would
Yeah.
see is 14th. Just if we're basing off, if we're just basing off on points as well, though, I mean, we would be above Nashville. But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know how the MLS power rankings for ESPN, how they really take into account for all of it, everything. But yeah, I think between 14th and 16th would be the safe bet for the Quakes.
yeah. I imagine it's just like any other power rankings they do. They have several staff writers that they weigh in, and they take the average of all their opinions. But I think if we move up Sporting Kansas City, then maybe you can argue Quakes can be above Nashville and Real Salt Lake, and they could be in that 15th spot. But I don't expect a massive surge because they beat the Whitecaps, because after all, Whitecaps are in that bottom five. So that would be a game that, according to power rankings, you'd expect the team in front to win. The way to really move yourself up in these power rankings, which I'm not sure too many teams care about unless you're Minnesota United. uh,
Yeah.
that that's the way to move by beating the teams ahead of you in the rankings. And with Timbers at 5, they'll have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I think probably 15th is a safe bet for the Quakes. I think that'll probably be where we land.
Yeah. And then lastly, since I am in San Diego, where the USL team San Diego Loyal is based in, I do want to give a quick nod to the USL Championship playoffs, which are starting this weekend. So in the Western Conference, the following teams made the playoffs: Reno, which is San Jose Earthquakes
Woo!
affiliate. Congratulations to Ian Russell's team there. Los Dos, LA Galaxy. There will be the first opponent, so that will be an interesting matchup. You have Phoenix Rising and Sacramento Republic in another matchup. El Paso Locomotive against Tulsa, and San Antonio FC against New Mexico United. That is your Western Conference. How exciting would it be if Reno won in the USL season?
Yeah, I mean that'd be crazy if they did. And who knows? We might, if that's the case, we might see someone from Reno coming our way. You never know.
Yeah, I definitely think so. In fact, I thought that Siad Haji might have been in Reno before he appeared off the bench against the Vancouver Whitecaps. So I think what they're doing over there in the biggest little town in the world, they are helping the development of these players. And while we appreciate what Reno does for San Jose Earthquakes, I'm sure that they're just as hungry, probably more hungry, to be honest, to win something in their own right there, because a title would go a long way in USL.
Oh yeah, 100%, definitely, and just for the city of Reno itself.
Yeah, Eastern Conference, you got Charlotte Independence. Charlotte also getting an MLS team that is coming in the next few years against Charleston Battery, Hartford Athletic versus St. Louis FC, Louisville FC, which has produced MLS players such as Mark Anthony Kay against Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and the Tampa Bay Rowdies, which was Daniel Vega's old team, I believe, against Birmingham Legion. And I'm not sure how many listeners to this podcast follow USL Championship or watch the games if you have ESPN Plus or whatever, but I do recommend that it is worth following them. At the very least, follow the Reno account and maybe a few others and check out what's going on, because that league is growing. I think that promotion relegation, while still being far into the future for U.S. soccer, it's growing into a possibility, and the success of the USL Championship, especially once MLS reaches its carrying capacity in terms of teams, I don't think they'll expand indefinitely, obviously, that that can be an important development in the landscape of this sport.
Yeah, definitely, and I think just for most Quick fans, it's always good to keep an eye on Reno, just because we do get players there often, so it's good to keep track of at least those guys because, well, you never know, they'll be coming playing for the Quakes soon. You never know.
Yeah, I know they did get a few more games nationally broadcast when play was interrupted and leagues were in the process of getting back into play. And also, if you happen to have ESPN Plus and you watch it for the Serie A or other leagues that it offers, there's no reason not to check out an USL game every now and then. here in San Diego, I'm fortunate, of course, that the San Diego Loyal games they get broadcast locally as well. So I definitely take a peek there as well. And their podcasts as well that they've had for a while now, they are part of the inspiration for me to have this podcast here with Tectonic Takes on the Beautiful Game Network in the first place. So San Diego Loyal, even though I haven't been to a game yet due to the COVID situation, does have a place in my heart.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully, soon enough, you can be able to go to the game. That'll be good.
Yeah, yeah. One last note on that, though, I do also want to give them a huge kudos to how they handled the heinous situations that they've been put. First with the racial slur directed towards one of their players, and then a homophobic slur in the very next game. How they forfeited both games, laying down and led by example. They didn't want to be a part or recognize being in a match where such incidents were happening and not being uh, disciplined. Unfortunately, due to FIFA regulations, that both those games resulted in 3-0 losses out of forfeit, and that ultimately cost San Diego Loyal from making the playoffs. But ultimately, bigger picture, they're winners in my book because they did the right thing, and I think they set the tone for the future of this club, showing that they're there for their players, they're there for the community, and San Diego Loyal is not just a name, but they really do care about people, and they want to set a good example.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just puts a good example for all sports teams. I mean, it's that's what we like to see, and we hope that stuff like that ends. I mean, that's where we're at with this world. We want stuff like that to come to an end.
Agreed. There's no place for that sort of language in any aspect of life. I don't care if when you were in high school, people called each other certain names or words in the locker room or during games. Just because something happens often or for a long period of time doesn't make it right. And there's always time for us to change and improve as people.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
All right. And then lastly, the remaining Quakes schedule. So we have another game against Portland Timbers to look forward to coming up 2 days from now at the time of recording against in Providence Park. And then we will be covering that Timbers game as well as Galaxy game at Dignity Health Sports Park in the next podcast recorded on October 16th. And then from there, it would just be 5 games left. Sounders at home, Whitecaps in Portland, RSL at home, LAFC at home, and Sounders away. So at least 2 heavy hitters left on the schedule based on the current standings with Timbers and Sounders. LAFC is always very dangerous as well, though finally the Quakes seem to crack the code and cannot dismiss the other teams in the schedule as well, as they'll be hungry for the playoffs as well. What are your predictions for the Timbers away game and the Galaxy away game, since we'll be covering that next week?
Well, I feel like for the Timbers one, it's going to be a very tough game to get a win. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping for best case scenario a draw. I mean, and the utmost amazing scenario would be, of course, get a win. But I think for the Quakes, it'd be great to get a draw out of going from Timbers away. Especially, I feel like it's going to be a full Timbers squad compared to the ones we faced before. And then for the Galaxy, I mean, we want to win. We want to win against the
Mm-hmm.
Galaxy, no matter what. We're not gonna. I mean, it's another form of California Classico. It's another rival game against a struggling Galaxy team, and we're hoping that we just gonna keep improving, and we can show why we're better than the Galaxy this season.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with a. This might seem a little overly pessimistic, but I'm not gonna disrespect what the Portland Timbers have done this season. They obviously won the MLS's back tournament, and they're still in a good position to have more postseason success this year. So I'm gonna say that they get a 3-1 win. So San Jose Earthquakes will briefly lose their winning momentum, but then good news is they play the Galaxy next, and I think that they'll win 2-1 even in Carson. So it's gonna be a bumpy road these next few games. I don't think it will be all smooth sailing as much as we've enjoyed the winning streak, but I think that we're gonna see improved performances regardless of the results.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that we can be so improved that we can pull out a draw. Just because that's what we got to hope for. We got to be more on the optimistic side. I don't want to be talking bad that we're going to get a loss.
Yeah, you're definitely Favi's friend, that's for sure. That's what he would say right now. He
Yeah.
would probably be like 2-0 win over Portland, 5-0 win over Galaxy.
Well, yeah, that's why I said draw. I got to be a little more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, they did get a draw that came before that 6-1 loss, so it is in the realm of possibility for sure.
Yeah.
So, any more thoughts, Will? It's been a
Uh,
pleasure to have you on this podcast.
no, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. I enjoyed it. I hope I'll be on sometime soon. And I think we forgot to mention though that the Galaxy game was their first Quakes win at home.
Oh, how did we? Wow, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
The
how did we
first win
forget
at
that?
home this season
Yeah,
for Quakes. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
And like not just this season, like since the Orlando win last season, it's been a while.
yeah.
Like over a year.
We'll just chalk it up to 2020. We blame 2020 throwing us off. It's been a weird year. But yeah, I mean, we got to say the first one at home, obviously get that off the belt was great. I mean, we forgot to mention it, but I mean, we didn't forget. We got it at the end, so.
Yeah, I applaud anyone who listened through this whole podcast wondering when are they going to mention this? When are they going to mention this? Congrats, your patience was rewarded thanks to Will. So yeah, we're glad that this was resolved, and we got to mention that important fact. And now that monkey's off our back, we're ready to go for more.
Yep, go Quakes.
Yep, go Quakes. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. You can follow Tectonic Takes at Tectonic Takes. You can follow myself at Ivan Ornelas2. And you can find Will at BP_Schneider on Twitter. We'll have all the handles and links to Patreon, their YouTube account, and all that good stuff on the podcast description as well. And also, even though Favi's not on here, definitely you should follow him too. He's at theonlyquaker.com. I mean, not the. He's at theonlyquaker on Twitter. Sorry, but that was Will and I for this episode of the Tectonic Takes podcast, and we'll see you next time. Go Quakes!
Go Quakes!